Welcome to EDC Journeys. If you enjoy the video, give me a thumbs up please, and consider subscribing. Enjoy! What's going on, EDC people, and what's our journey today? Well, we are going to do episode 2, part 2, where I explain very briefly the Wharncliffe. And I say very briefly because you can obviously go online and see full histories of the blade shape and all the stuff. And oh my god, is it starting to rain right now? For real? So my description will be as brief as possible. It's just to add on to part 1 of the Wharncliffe blade sharpening, where we talked about D2, but I said I would talk about the blade shapes as well, and so because it was a Wharncliffe, here we are. So this is the knife I sharpened, the FH31. Okay, a Wharncliffe blade is defined, it's, as I understand it, essentially the taper from the top gradually goes down to the tip. The tip can puncture, so in other words, it does have a pointed tip, as opposed to a traditional sheep's foot, where a sheep's foot blade, see how this has a sudden, well, it still comes down to a sharp point, so I guess I would still call this a Wharncliffe. But if that came out further and made that point more, like, it would still be a straight blade, but it would make it less like piercing, then that's a sheep's foot. The Wharncliffe is still able to puncture, but has the functionality, or the utilitarian use of the straight edge, often found in traditional knives, because at this point a lot of people have moved on to all kinds of drop point and all different cantos and things like that. But the Wharncliffe had and has its advantages, and everyone always uses the example cutting rope. And the thing about the Wharncliffe is, somehow in the design, and I'm not an engineer, so I can't really truly explain it that well, but in the design, first of all, you have a tip that you can use as like an X-Acto razor, but you have puncturability if you still need it, whereas the sheep's foot traditionally wouldn't or shouldn't have at least as much. And you have the way you cut, okay, you're going to have the same force and power anywhere along this straight blade, as opposed to a blade that has belly. Let's just say, for example, a blade like this, where there's belly, there's going to be different points of power as you push through. Here's another one. Now, technically people could argue, because I don't have a flat thing to show it to you on, that is not a sheep's foot because it has some belly. Oh, and that is not the right amount of belly. There we go. Okay, it does curl up a little bit, but you know what? I still think, or not a sheep's foot, a Wharncliffe. See, I made the mistake myself. Another version of something like that would be the Kershaw leak, where it's basically a Wharncliffe. It tapers from the top to the bottom. It does puncture. It's got a nearly completely straight edge right up until this part, and then it has the slightest of belly. So personally, I would label this a Wharncliffe. What you want to call it is up to you, or up to Kershaw, I suppose, or you. But to me, all 4 of these are Wharncliffes, and they have their use. I used to hate that design, and since discovering its purpose, its use, and seeing it more, especially in traditional knives, I've appreciated it more. I just think that it looks really great, and the functionality of it, the usability, as opposed to, how can I explain this? A straight back knife. Okay, if the blade were on the opposite side of this, if this side were sharp and this were dull, that were the top, better yet, this is a straight top knife. Okay, not a drop. Guys, when I was reviewing my video, I noticed I had talked about the straight back, and I was comparing it with the Wharncliffe, so I'm interrupting that video broadcast to insert this video where I make my point better. Where I was talking about, if you turn the Wharncliffe upside down, and this were the sharp side and this is the dull side, like a straight edge. Okay, the straight edge, on the other hand, if you turned over and this were the dull side and this were the sharp side, well, you'd have a good debate on it if it was a sheep's foot or a Wharncliffe, I guess, because I would still consider it a Wharncliffe because the puncture is still there. It would have to, the top belly, I guess we'll call it, would have to come out further to get rid of it. You want it to not be blunt, but it's not intended to be a puncturing. It's intended entirely for, well, a sheep's foot is intended to not to hit something by accident, not to poke something by accident. This, you're still going to be able to poke. It's meant for woodwork, whittling, things like that, rope, so on and so forth. Okay, back to the original broadcast. The top is completely straight. It doesn't go down at all. You have a nice straight area on the like you would a drop point, but the top doesn't drop. So it just has large belly. It's a straight top. As I was saying with this, you know, you would have something similar if you turned it upside down. You'd have this straight back with a sharp blade that you would use like this, right? But it's not. It's the opposite. Your power along the edge is equal somehow, you know, like it's, and as you go deeper into material, the force will continue to gain and be equally as powerful anywhere along the edge. That's how I understand it. That's how I understand the Wharncliffe design. You know, there's a lot of different kind of debate on whether where Wharncliffe came from. I know that Sheffield does have some claim to it, where they say that there was a Lord Sheffield who created the blade, and I think it was like the early 1800s. I've also heard stories where the Vikings might have had something like this, though. So it's, you know, obviously different cultures might have had these shapes. Who knows back then, and you know how the communication worked and how trade worked. And I wasn't there. I don't know. What I do know is that this is certainly a Wharncliffe. Out of all of these, you know, if you wanted to fight about any of them, this one would be the one that would be by definition a Wharncliffe. And yeah, so that's what a Wharncliffe blade is. That's what it's used for. That's what it looks like. This is the one that we dulled, and it's in the one that was in D2 that we dulled and sharpened. It is very sharp right now. You've seen a review of the leak. I have not done the 51 yet. This is the 51, I believe. Yep. But we've just did D2, so we don't, you know, we won't look at that quite right away. The micarta work knife definitely has a review coming out very soon. Like it a lot. Very neutral feeling, you know, swept blade. Wharncliffe blade shape. Pretty cool for a slip joint. Definitely nice micarta handle. Listen to that walkie talk for, I think, what is it, $16? So I like it a lot. You know, and again, to me, this is absolutely a Wharncliffe. I know there's people out there who would say otherwise. It does have a completely straight blade. There is absolutely no belly, but they would argue about this drop here. It does slope the whole way, okay? So this is higher than here, is higher than here, is higher than here. The only reason that this spot exists is for your finger, and then, yes, the drop is more sudden here, but to be a sheep's foot, you wouldn't have that puncture, because a sheep's foot was literally designed not to look like a sheep's foot, even though that's what a lot of people think, but was to, I guess, use on a sheep's hoof, where they didn't want to puncture so much as just cut. And I just punctured my finger. So as far as I'm concerned, if it comes to a puncturing point where it's clearly able to puncture, and it has a straight blade, or as, you know, close as possible, it's Wharncliffe. You know, call these two modified Wharncliffes if you'd like. But this one absolutely is. This one, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely is. These two are the only two that I would even be iffy about just because of the slight belly. But what else would it be? You could say drop point, but I don't think so. I would call them Wharncliffes. At best, modified, or at most. Okay, we're under 10 minutes. This is part 2 of episode 2 of D2. Everyone have a good day, and we'll see you shortly with some more videos. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up. For more content like this, consider subscribing, and then hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything. Have a great day.